While people are logging on, we just want to say thank you for attending today's webinar. Your lines are muted, but if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type them into the Q&A panel and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. Today's topic is keeping omnichannel marketing analytics simple and is presented by Axtria. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Vandana Singh. She is going to lead the session and she's going to introduce herself, and then we'll let each of the panelists introduce themselves and get started.
Thank you, Andrea. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session where we're focusing on marketing analytics for Omnichannel. By way of introduction, I lead the Omnichannel practice at Axtria, and I have more than 20 plus years of experience in pharmaceutical industry. I was at Bristol Myers Squibb for 12 years before I joined Axtria, and I was at Sanofi before that and ZS Associates, and held a variety of roles in analytics and marketing ops and sales ops in my career. Nice to be here, and I would hand over to Lisa.
Thanks, Vandana. Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Hernandez. I have 20 plus years experience in the pharmaceutical industry, spent most of that time as a brand marketer in US and global roles, and am currently heading up our Omnichannel Center of Excellence build at Daiichi Sankyo in the US Oncology Business Division.
Thanks, Lisa. Bob?
Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Bob Allen. I'm with Bristol Myers Squibb. I oversee the Omnichannel Experience team for US solid tumor oncology. And I, much like Vandana, who I was a colleague of, a former colleague of, have 20 plus years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry.
Thanks, Bob. Devesh?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Bob. I'm Devesh Verma, principal here at Axtria. Set up our initial omni-channel practice, which now Vandana is taking it to the next level. Have been a colleague of Lisa in my prior role too, and similar to everybody else, 20 plus years in the industry. Nice meeting you all.
Yeah. Shiva?
Hi, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Vandana. I share a common thread of having 20 plus years of experience. I'm a board certified pharmacist. I'm also a data hog. I tend to love using data to inform better decisions. I lead the Omnichannel Center of Excellence at Menarini Stemline across hematology and oncology brands, and absolutely enjoyed this discussion and looking forward to it.
Thank you. I will now share my screen, and if the panel members can let me know whether you can see my slides, that'll be appreciated.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thanks. I think I have to.
So Vandana, you're saying that duplicated one, right?
Yeah.
Please.
And I have to do something to unshare and share again. So this time it's not working.
You go to display settings.
Yeah, but I don't see it this time.
At the top, yeah.
Right at the top in the middle.
Yeah, now it works. Okay.
Yep. There you go.
Thank you, everyone. So we chose this topic because as we've been working in the industry on omnichannel, we realized that there's a lot of data. And I think as omnichannel marketers and analytics people, we want to make sure that we are able to drive action through our decisions. So, hopefully you're equally excited about this topic, and we would like to make this a very engaging conversation through the panel discussion. What I'll do is start off with a few setup slides just to ground everybody on what we mean by omnichannel analytics, what the key challenges are. And then I'll stop sharing my slides. We will get into a conversation with all the panel members. And then towards the end, we will open it up to the audience for a Q&A as well. As we all know, right, so with Omnichannel, we are focused on meeting the customer's needs, whether it is the HCP or the patient. And we know that, that there's a lot of data, right? So the customer is in various settings, whether it is in the clinic, in the hospital, in the virtual setting, their needs are different. And then you are trying to reach the customers through various channels, and not all channels are even listed here, right? So the amount of channels, the way we engage with the customers has grown over the years. There's been an explosion. And that's good. That's good for us because more data gives us better insights for the customers, right? And we can plan so many actions for the customers all at once. And we can analyze their behaviors now with the current technology on a daily basis or even a real-time basis. So that's the vision of Omnichannel. And that's what we all do for a living right now. And now another aspect of Omnichannel is the orchestration at different scales. So we all, many companies have started with omnichannel orchestration, initially doing it on an annual basis through marketing mix studies, customer segmentation, message testing, and so on. Then the industry evolved into, learning more frequently, right, through A/B testing and measuring campaigns on a more frequent basis. Now there are companies looking at dynamic call plans, doing your more frequent dynamic targeting, segments and scores, and so on. And then, of course, many people associate Omnichannel with next best actions, suggestions that you can send on a daily or weekly basis, right? So it's happening on various timescales. And you have to make the different decisions at those various timescales. So that's a challenge as well. So with all of that, so it becomes complicated, right? So how do we make sure that we are looking at the right metrics at the right time on the various timescales? How do you make sure that your insights are actionable, right? How do you make sure that you're providing timely insights and they are not outdated by the time you provide your insights? So these are some questions we'll be exploring with the audience. And so I'll stop sharing at this point and get into the panel conversation. So my first question is for all the 4 panel members, and we can go one by one. So the question is, what do you see as doing well now in terms of analytics and insights that we were not doing 5 years ago? Lisa?
Sure, I'll start. And probably being somewhat of the newbie of the panel to Omnichannel, I would say, I just think it is so exciting, this move to cross-channel performance measurement. So this holistic view, the customer journey, where they're engaging across all the channels. So of course, to your earlier point, this can create a lot of complexity and an overwhelming of data, but this holistic view is creating so much more opportunity for us and engagement. And I think probably in the focus of today is this closer engagement with the analytics team based on this cross-channel holistic view with brand and that synergy of what we're looking at and why across the journey, and that full alignment as it ladders up to brand strategy, I think is so exciting and such a huge positive outcome of our whole move to an omni-channel approach. And what it does is it not only integrates analytics and brand closer together, but the extended brand team as well. So really importantly, field sales, and, we're not operating in silos anymore where you have the sales analytics team and you have the media analytics team and you have, and we're looking at the performance data and engagement data in these silos. And oftentimes, and in some cases still being done by vendor partners that are actually implementing the channels, which is not a bad thing. It is just, it's a missed opportunity, or was a missed opportunity for us as we were potentially missing that deep understanding of our own data and how to potentially leverage that data and mine insights further, and have that close engagement and partnership with our vendor partners as we're getting closer to and touching the data and our analytics folks working closely with brand, and then ultimately the extended brand team, and everybody having this kind of visibility to what's happening in the journey, and pulling in all these different data elements that we had historically been looking at in silos. I just think it's a tremendous opportunity for us, that we are getting better and better at, mining this data.
Oh, that's a great point, Lisa. Yeah, we've come further along in the last 5 years in terms of looking at all channels together. Bob, would you like to add something to this?
Absolutely. And, just to kind of add on to what Lisa said, because I think she was spot on. I think, 5 years ago, we were looking at individual channels, and we were concerned about getting the data for each channel. Like, measurement had always been important, but how are we measuring the channel and the impact of the channel and the tactics in that channel? I think what Omnichannel has done for us is it took away the notion of channel, and it said, what is the experience that we're trying to provide to that physician or to that patient? What does that look like? So then you are needing to take the walls away, and instead of working in silos, look at the different aspects of the different channels and how are they performing? What are they delivering to create that better experience? So I think we've come from kind of just looking at, very siloed, as Lisa put it, kind of channel data, to now thinking of who's at the center of that experience, and how do the channels actually feed into them, and how can those channels work together going forward? I think we're there. We talk about kind of right place, right message, right channel. Even that feels a little bit antiquated now, but I think we're really beginning to go beyond just scratching the surface as to where then can we take that data and what more can we do with it now that we're providing that experience. But I don't think we've quite optimized the experience yet for the physician, but I do think we've come a long way from where we were 5 years ago.
Shiva?
I think I want to echo what Lisa and Bob just explained. I think it's very, very nicely said. A couple of things that I'd like to add for additional context. First thing is, COVID was a great leveler. It actually forced the entire industry to rethink the way we conduct business. We all grew up in the generation of sales and NPP. But the reality of the business is that it is forcing us to truly think omnichannel, where, for example, personal sales is a channel, a very big investment that the company makes. So the real opportunity, I think we're starting to do this, is to integrate and how we amplify the efforts of the sales force. The goal is to empower and really make them successful as sales reps by providing that omnichannel surround sound on how to make them more effective. And potentially, one of the things that I think we're getting very good at is, for those positions and those particular quote unquote white space positions, the real question is, what is the best way to matriculate them from activations to actually adopting a brand? This is something that we all are continuing to do, and we are continuing to think about. And another thing I think we're beginning to scratch the surface of, I think Bob alluded to this, is the context. Is if you're going to actually provide a message, is it in the right context? It's like you're stuck at Newark Airport and you get a text for a hotel that's going to have a shuttle back. That's context. But if you're at home watching a football game and you get a text saying, here's the hotel, it may be the right message, but it's really off context, right? So building on that is something that we all are working on, is the right KPI. Because in the past, a lot of the KPIs used to be activity. But the reality is that a KPI in its true essence has to be a leading indicator. What are those 2-3 things that you look at that says, okay, my health of my business is good? And this is something that is forcing the enormous amount of data. So if you look at a dashboard and you see 40 KPIs, we have an opportunity to actually right size it. So with that said, back to you, Vandana. This is exciting. I'm getting to learn from my panelists as well. So this is exciting.
Thank you, Shiva. I know a lot of things, and I was going to come back to the panel and ask, what can we improve? And your example actually I'll piggyback on that. I did get a text message from an airline about my flight getting delayed, and they put me on a flight which was after my return flight.
There you go.
So they're the context example, right? So, and I was thinking omni-channel customer experience, this is not the thing. So yeah, that's the challenge we're all trying to solve. Devesh, your perspective also on what's working, and then I'll come back to all the panel members on, how we can improve. What are some gaps that you're seeing right now? Yeah.
Sure, yeah, thank you, Vanna. And again, I think echoing everything what the panel was suggesting, I think one change that I have observed or seen in last at least 5+ years is there is greater focus on the customer level. A lot of panel members mentioned about that. So the world, I think with omnichannel, one part that has moved is moving from a very campaign-centric view to a more customer-centric view. So in terms of like the customer can, in our world, the customer can be either the prescriber, the patient, maybe even the payer too. But when you're looking into the core aspect of omnichannel is to focus on the customer versus having the silos that exist on the pharma side, which Lisa alluded to, saying that, okay, you have the brand side, you have the sales side, analytics happen separately. But if you put customer at the center and forget about your own organizational silo, that's what the focus needs to be. And that's where the focus has been moving with the omni-channel shift. Like in prior days, we used to do, again, all these campaign ROIs, something is working, not working. But there is a greater focus on trying to look from a more 360 point of view, saying that whether the surround sound itself is working or not. I also echo, I think, what Shiva was saying. COVID has been a great accelerator towards omni-channel. I think that's my impression too.
Yeah, can I just, I just want to build on what Devesh was saying, because it strikes me, it's like the great sort of leveling factor for all discussions that we have on omni-channel, which is we're approaching how we engage a little bit differently. And it's sort of the framing of a lot of the conversations I've been having internally at our company is this is about us being better in supporting our customers and what, and HCPs and what they need to accomplish. So it's sort of like a rallying cry for us around, and so that customer-centric notion, I think it really is at the heart of everything. And it's not that we weren't before, but we're just flipping it, right? And so it does kind of change the whole approach and how we think about things in discussions with legal compliance. It's like, this is coming from the perspective of us being better for them, for HCPs and how they're serving patients. So we need to get them the information in the way that's going to be best suited for them. I just wanted to build on that because I think it's a really important point and something that we kind of continually talk about all the time.
No, and Lisa, that's a great point, right? Like everybody's focused on customer centricity. And I think Shiva also talked about the context, Bob mentioned it. So what do you think are our key challenges? And especially because the session is focused, towards our analytics audience in terms of where, our analytics have evolved tremendously, but there's still a long way to go, right? So what do you think are our key challenges? And what do you wish we could do more right now? Yeah.
And
so maybe Lisa, Bob, you want to go first? Yeah, go ahead.
I'd be happy to kind of start. I think, and this is a conversation I was having this morning. I think the data is there, right? But in some cases, it's the process, how we actually can utilize the data. And again, I think Lisa was hitting on this. It's like, we're trying to do better for our audience, right? Whether it's patients or physicians. And, we have data that, again, and we're talking digital data for the most point, right? So we get it almost instantaneously. I don't want to overpromise by saying instantaneous, but everyone knows what I mean. But how we can actually take that data, analyze it, and then make decisions around it, or even in some cases access it. Because again, if you work in a big matrix organization, it might have to pass through a couple of hands before it actually gets to the marketing organization to utilize. Time passes. So how do we look at our internal processes to enable a better experience all the way around? Again, if we're talking about relevance, if we're talking about context includes messages, right? So, we at pharma aren't good at creating a lot of messages to create a lot of context. But how if we could, what is the mechanism for data to enable the distribution of those messages to create that real-time context? So I think one of the gaps for us is, how do we think differently about our business? How do we think differently about how we manage the data? It's not just enough to have it and create reports around it, but if you're really going to action on it in this omni-channel way to create an experience that's profound, differentiating, meaningful, what then can you do to better enable that internally? So that I think is a gap, is really around the process of how data is managed and utilized.
Yeah, one of what we're focused on right now is getting right, and I think I think about it at the beginning of what you were describing, Bob, which is the orchestration of the data. With the abundance of all of these data sets coming in, it's so crucial that we understand how those data sets matter, what they're going to, potentially how they ladder up, how brand, how strategy, how they're meaningful, and then the frequency. So this gets to kind of the frequency with which we're going to, we get it when we'll need it in order to mine those insights and act on them, and then the associated metadata as well. This all informs how we're going to communicate effectively. So we're kind of honing in a little bit on this, and I think about it as the upfront piece. So like, what are all of the data sets and how are they critical? And then how are we going to build that process and mine that, because we want it all. I think Shiva, you said you're a data hog now. I say the same thing. I want all the data, everything in, but that orchestration of it is so key. Otherwise, we're going to, get quickly overrun and maybe lose some of those really compelling insights that are going to drive, business.
Yep.
Lisa and Shiva and Bob, do you think you are getting the right insights right now, actionable insights? I know we are doing a lot of analysis now, and we're all like, looking at omnichannel and all of that. But do you feel that you're getting true actionable insights on a timely manner right now?
Let me take this on. I think the real answer is sometimes. The reality is, while the entirety of the data insights is, we're really looking at three really verticals. One is activity, which we get tons and tons and tons of data, right? The two is the actual engagement, which is the middle, where the insights are supposed to start to culminate. And third is the impact of whatever you're doing, right? And that's where your KPIs, your metric come into play. Now, I want to build on what Bob said about the internal processes, whether it's actually coming up with variation on the digital content factory, being able or working through the different ecosystem of data. For example, I'll give you a real world challenge. While the CDP, we all have worked with CDP, we want to put things together. The real challenge sometimes is to stay within safe harbor, because part of that is to ensure that we take de-identified data, but then the challenge is the compliance bar is that you don't want to have a semblance or even a perception of you trying to identify. Because that kind of is at odds, because you're bringing patient data in, like lab or what have you, and then you're bringing physician data in. And one of the challenges, once you bring it in, you want to be compliant, which is absolutely not an option. But then once you actually have those filters, the goal is to say, okay, what are the meaningful things? It could be as simple as, what is the barometer? What is driving my abandonment rate at a pharmacy? And then just throw things out. So there are 5 different areas you look at. You can have a McKesson feed, you can have the pharmacy feed, you can actually have the actual real data that from a website on the downloads you have of your either copay card or what have you. So the question is, then you start putting them together and you show activity. But then the reality is the why behind the why, that I would call it the transformational insight, is where the marketer's dream comes to life. And that is an area where I think we still have some ways to go. I don't know if my panelists agree with me. I mean, that is where the opportunity lies.
Yeah. So we need like sharper insights, more detail, actionable. It looks like we're doing a lot of stuff, but we're not getting into those deeper insights that we could serve up to the marketers so that they could take action, right? Devesh, you've been in marketing and on the analytics side, you've lived both worlds. Could you shed some light on what challenges we run into as analytics folks when in order to, Shiva hit upon some of those, right? The safe harbor and the CDP. Are there additional challenges that the analytics teams run into in order to provide those sharper, deeper insights?
No, absolutely. So again, I think from an analytics point of view, I think the answer is simple. I think the way I see it, it's a comfort level. Again, it's the comfort level of the analytics team. I think when you're talking to people on the analytics side, they are very comfortable in analyzing data, building models. That's the world they live in. And they believe that as marketers, as we are seeing, I think Lisa, Bob, Shiva, I think as marketers, you may or may not be as savvy, or you may not be even as interested in looking into all the details. You're looking into the recommendations, you're looking at the insights on which you can make that decision. So that's a transformation, I think, on the analytics side that people need to make, is like how they can really tailor their analytics into converting into insights, and then converting into the impact that Shiva is talking about, saying that, okay, if you do XYZ, what benefit you are going to get to, correct, in terms of either customer engagement or in terms of helping with the brand's bottom line, top line. So what impact can there be? So I see, again, I think it's part of the problem with the training and also the comfort zone of many analytics people, and they need to transcend to the level where the marketing people can make decisions based on the data or the insights that they are providing. So that's a gap I see. Again, I think that's a gap. It's part of the training, correct? I think it's part of where people grew up, and that's what they are comfortable with.
Could I add on to what Devesh said? I want to let him off the hook just a little bit, because I do see it as a two-way street. I was just telling my team this today, as we have an analytics group internally. Vandana, again, former colleague, was a part of that group, which is a great group. But they're only as good as the information we provide. So we almost have to explain to them, like, what are our requirements? Like, what are we trying to do with the data? What are we trying to understand with the data? And then how can we work with our insights and analytics folks to help meet those needs and understanding? Because, it's really interesting. I hear people say that I'm not getting what I need. I don't have the data. Well, what are you telling them what you need? Yeah. Or are you telling them at least what you're trying to do with the data? Our business insights and analytics people can't read minds, so we have to meet them halfway. We have to provide them with the requirements, show them what we're trying to do, or at least explain, so they can come back to the table with viable solutions or reports that kind of help us better articulate and understand what we're trying to communicate with that data. So I just wanted to let you know, Devesh, you are not in alone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, Bob, you're absolutely right. I think within TSI, and Lisa alluded to that, I think we created the concept of extended brand team, which was to bring like people from the insights and the analytics, so that they are looking into the key brand priorities. So when they are looking into some analytics or some recommendation, they are becoming part of it. So I think, Lisa, that whole trend is continuing there, but that is the idea. But yes, I think you cannot go and work in silos. You need to communicate. At the end of it, both parties communicating better with each other will really improve the level of insights or the quality of insights that are coming from the analytics teams too.
Yep, just wanted to add a couple of points on building on what Bob and Devesh both said. Bob, couldn't agree with you more, because it has actually been one of my things that I've worked on as a marketer, is formulating the right key business questions, and with the analytics and the internal team, because the real questions that once you frame them, taking the time to frame them, because the reality is pure omnichannel data may not actually give you an answer. There may be data sets outside omnichannel that need to be integrated. Maybe and it's an ATU. Maybe there's other data. For example, the question is this campaign driving new patient starts? That omnichannel cannot inform that. They can tell you, yeah, my physicians are engaging, but the actual conversion or the micro conversion, the answer may lay elsewhere. So being able to integrate that goes to what you were saying, is asking the right question and taking the time to build that. So
how do you, and Lisa, feel free to answer this. The question also is, when do you set that context? Is it throughout? Is it in the beginning when you're running a campaign? Is it in the middle? So, how do you engage with your analytics teams so that you build that partnership to get the insights you want?
Yeah, I think about it, and we've been talking a lot about this in a continuum. So, if you have the luxury of starting all of this in a pre-launch setting, how the brand is formulating strategy, omnichannel is part of that, analytics, wherever they sit. Again, it's this extended brand team model that now omnichannel is helping to orchestrate or integrate all of the moving parts. But what is the data that can even inform pre-launch that we have in the data sets? Like, what are those key business questions? What do we know about our customers from other campaigns, other data sets, other brands, to even inform how the pre-launch brand is building this out and informing customer journeys ahead of launch? And then when we're in market, that's when the real, the actual, I guess, data starts coming in, when we're determining how they're engaging and in what is it leading to. And it kind of builds on that's was my earlier point around this orchestration of data. And I think we've really built on that, because with and nobody ever is intimate with all of the data sets that are coming in. But the more we talk about what those key business questions are and what we're learning from the data and the data sets that we are integrating, insights and analytics teams can then really start. That's when it all starts to sing, because it's like, how can we leverage or even pull in this other data set that we may not be using, and at what cadence or frequency do we need it to then continue to keep answering those key business questions, how we evolve our segments, how that informs media, targeting. All of those things can be happening in real time if we want them to, but that again is where you sort of lock that in with brand and all laddering up to those key business questions. And as that evolves, right, everybody's part of that. And it's such a great opportunity now for us to provide what the insights and analytics teams need in order to be part of that team and part of that dialogue and part of the evolution of how we're getting better and better at what we do.
That's a great point. Actually, it's not just a one-time thing in the beginning of the campaign or the end. It's throughout that extended brand team. I think that's a great takeaway. What I'll do is just, again, share a few slides and invite the panel members to comment on some of these slides. So again, help me with the sharing, because I think we went through the questions. Sorry, how do I go to the slideshow again? And again, I have the same issue.
Display setting, yeah.
And hide presenter view, and I go to the next slide. So yeah, so these were some of the key nuggets that our panel members already told us, right? So what we are talking about is right in the beginning, as we are planning coming up with our measurement plan, right? Keeping that in mind, who are your audiences? It's not one audience. It could be your executive team, it could be your marketers, it could be marketing ops, it could be your agencies, it could be your field people. So understanding who your audiences are is key. I think that's step one. Step two, we talked a lot about context. What is the context in which they are operating, right? So that's another key thing for us as analytics professionals to keep in mind. The third, I think all the panel members hit on is, why are you analyzing? Identifying those key business questions up front, right? That is critical, because once you identify the key business questions, you go and then start collecting the data you need to do that analysis. And then, of course, also understanding what are your leading indicators, what are your lagging indicators, what can be automated into dashboards versus what needs deep dive analysis. So that's the planning part. Then I would just skip to then now the presentation of analytics, right? So when you're presenting, that's equally important, because you've done all this analysis and you are making recommendations that you want those recommendations to be adopted, right? And we many times, hear from both sides, the analytics team saying, I provided this recommendation, nobody listened. And the brand teams may be saying that, I did not get the insights I was looking for. The insights, exactly, they were not actionable for me, or they didn't understand my context in which I was operating, right? So I think some key best practices, these have been well known for a long time. These are not new, but in the omnichannel world, it becomes even more important for us to keep these in mind. So limiting your key insights to the business question that you identified early. Showing only the most compelling supporting data. So we would have analyzed tons and tons of data. Even our dashboards might behind the scenes have tons of metrics. But what is the key KPI that you want to be focusing on? And what is the key, the one or two supporting data that proves whatever your key business question, whatever your answer is, whatever your recommendation is, right? Instead of showing 20 charts, which are telling the same thing in many different ways, pick the one compelling supporting data that tells your story, right? The third one is connecting with your audience at an emotional level, right? Instead of just presenting numbers and data and so on, are you truly understanding what your audience's excitement is or what their pain is? Are you telling them exactly how they can maybe change certain audience types or take certain actions with a subgroup and improve their performance instead of just telling them the ROI number? And then the fourth is, just how you communicate, right? So start with why you're recommending a change, followed by the how and the what. For example, our data shows that following a certain sequence leads to a 30% increase in new patient starts. And we have these capabilities now to do more of this orchestration using these sequences. I recommend doing these sequences, right? Start with the why before you get into the prescriptive mode of what. And then, of course, keep it simple, right? Don't get into all the details of your analysis, but just keep it simple. I rushed through this a little bit because I do want to get to the next section for, showing some sample reports and invite panel members for their feedback. And then we'll open it up for Q&A as well. So here, yeah, go ahead, Bob. Did you want to add something to this?
No, Vandana, I just wanted to add, if you want to go back to your previous slide, just a 10 second. I think this is a great slide, and the operating mantra is less is more, and I think what is very helpful at times is tying the KBQ to a test and learn kind of mindset, which is something more organizationally mindset. So you may say, for example, something as simple as trying to figure out how EMR is going to work for your brand, say an oncology brand. So you may not be able to go and jump head in, but being able to actually say, okay, this is how I'm going to set up a test and learn. And here's the cadence of that, is being able to get into some of that kind of, and being able to be fearless in testing those assumptions is potentially a path forward, because we may not have, the analytical teams may not have a solve for every question, right? So just wanted to add that little context as well.
No, thank you for that, Shiva. Yeah. So at this point, I'm going to show 3 visuals, and I will invite the panel members to comment on them and tell us what you like about this. So this first one is from Uber's investor deck, right? Publicly available. What do you like about this visual?
Well, it's, first of all, it's visual.
Yeah.
Great point.
and secondly, it's quite simple, right? Again, it's fun to work for a company like this, that you could be that visual and that fun, assuming that it's showing its growth over the way in which people can actually utilize Uber over the past 10 years. it's a great way to show it instead of a chart with words, actually showing in an icon format the way in which people actually do provide, or the way in which Uber does provide transport. I think it's great.
And then also you notice the different, the different service lines they have. So that comes through as well. They started with two types of cars or two types of services in 2011, and now they've exploded to all these types. And it comes through very quickly when you look at it.
Yeah, it's immediately clear how they've grown.
Yeah, the picture says 1,000 words. I think that's what I see it. I think you see it. I think there are three things that will come right away. If you look at the picture, the growth of Uber, comparing left-hand side, right-hand side, I think they've grown. They've grown in the service line. And if you look into everything and you try to get into, and just within a few seconds, you'll realize that they're becoming part of the whole daily life. On the left-hand side, you only need Uber when you're going to an airport, or maybe you forgot your car or something, correct? Right-hand side, now you're talking about intercity, you're talking about your groceries delivered, you're talking about your health. So kind of they are saying that, okay, they're bringing the picture that Uber is becoming part of life, and everything you can find out in just these two pictures, correct? So that's what I like. So 3 key points conveyed in a very simple message here.
Here, I'll go to the next one. This is slightly busier, conveys a lot of content. Seems like this could be like a leave behind, to convince the investors for something. What is your reaction on this one? I know you'll have to take some time to take it in a little bit. And then how can this be improved if you have any suggestions? Yeah.
Let me take a shot at that. I think this is building on what the panel member said. I think this actually sets it up, provided getting a taxi is contextualized to the user. If that is what the user is, the user behavior, if Uber is able to mine our individual usage and says, okay, at how many times did in the last 30 days did the user actually use a taxi service or was close to a hub? If that is the context, then this would be very powerful. But if somebody lives in the suburbs and is really not looking at what that cadence is, maybe uses Uber once in 6 months, then it is a little out of sync. So being able to actually customize it to the user experience would be the opportunity. So that's my 2 cents.
I'm cheating and looking at like the coding up top, but if this is about expanding use cases, right, it's very clear that this is a channel, right, where they're looking to expand. So, and the goal and the objective is very clear: get every taxi on Uber by 2025. So Uberize taxis. And I like the way it is very, clearly set up, right? So who are the key stakeholders and what is the rationale for each of them, right? So what led to this approach in this channel? Then there's data to support it. And then there's what I think is the how that they're going to implement this, so they've got the infrastructure to do this. So again, it's another nice, fairly simple, very clearly aligned to their objectives in a channel recommendation. We think about it in channels. So they're going to Uberize taxis next.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like 2 things. One on this one, I think first they are following the rule of 3, correct? So nothing, if you look into every bucket, I'm sure there's a lot more value there, but they're putting like only 3 because that's what human brain can remember. So if they're making a presentation, want to resonate, you always want to highlight not more than 3 points. Second, I like the focus going from value to their people, or in our case, employees, or because ultimately every company exists because they're employees in the company. So value to drivers, falling to value to their customers who are the riders, and then finally the value to the company. So they are trying to create that chain from their own people to their customers, then back to like, okay, what is the value for the organization in a very simple manner. So those 2 things, they strike out for me on this slide.
Can I just add real quickly? I'm thinking how hard it was to create this slide. So to think of the world in which we live in sometimes, right? How easy would it have been to provide 3 or 4 slides where you're providing the context of the taxi market, You talk about the growth opportunity, you talk about the integration, with the AutoCAD on one slide. It is that editing process that you keep on whittling it down to tell a more concise story. Like out of those 3 slides, what are the 1 or 2 points that are most relevant? And then it just begins to really condense to a nicely told story that is salient, right? So I'm sure it took a lot of effort to simplify what could have been a complicated story about a great growth opportunity for, $1 billion growth opportunity for this company. So I really appreciate it. I think it goes back to what you said before, Vandana. It's the old cliche, less is more, but to get to that less, you really need to work on telling that story. So.
It's a lot of effort. And yeah, thanks for highlighting that, Bob. It can't be that you ran your analysis last night and created your deck today and you're going to the meeting. You will not get to these crisp insights if you did not focus on, if you did not iterate through it, right, to actually get to the main points. So planning that ahead of time is helpful. I will go to a third example. This is a pharma one and would invite Devesh to comment on this first.
Sure. Again, I think, and I would like panel members to comment because this is a little bit coming out of my own work. This is anonymized data, but this is how we present some of the work we do on the marketing mix side, which is now you're looking into cross-channel optimization. We're trying to make a recommendation to the brand saying that, okay, what is the right level of investment, promotional investment behind the brand? And what are some of the levers that they can pull to, again, increase the effectiveness of those channels? I think there is the rule of trees. So it's set up in saying that, okay, what we have observed historically on the left-hand side, I think what are some of the insights broken into what are the top insights that are coming based on the current spend. But then moving forward in the future, what are some of the recommendations we could make to the brand that they can generate more value from their investments? So that's how this deck or this presentation, this part of our executive summary, that's set up to bring that story out. Again, I'm a little bit biased, so I'm not going to comment much on it, but I will let the panel comment on it. Again, I think being some of the marketers and the consumers of a report like this, I would like to hear back from the panel too, saying that, okay, what do you think?
Great. Well, I can start, Devesh. I think, there is clarity in this. At the end of the day, you want to know what are the levers that I can pull? What are the channels that provide the investment or provide the return on the investment? So I think that's clear. And what are the recommendations? How does that information, turn into a recommendation? Having kind of 3 KPIs, in the way in which you've kind of laid it out really helps to simplify the story. So yeah, I could definitely see this, being used in a meeting and people clearly understanding how you got from, again, the measurement to the recommendations.
And I'll jump on that. I really like the layout. What I would suggest as we continue to refine this is integrate less as NPP, but actually more as surround sound. That is an opportunity that I see it as well. Because I think the more we can talk about how patient NPP or HCP NPP integrates with personal promotion, then you actually are truly omnichannel, right? Because otherwise, this still leaves the viewer with the perception, oh, so maybe I can over-index on HCP promotion and I have an opportunity. But if one frames that, and I like the way you transition to the right-hand side, where brand A can benefit. So the what if analysis, you've done a very nice job. And if that what if analysis can actually say by reallocating from pure, say, a siloed non-personal or something like that, but in order to actually do the sales amplification, you get from, instead of 2x, you get 6x. If we are able to do that from a pure analytics, then you're cooking with gas.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's it's very clear, it's very concise. But I would have a similar ask as to what is the impact, what is the cross pollination of them and that viewpoint, right? So it's not going to be strictly by channel amplification of HCP personal promotion, patient, it's going to be in some way how they work in tandem with each other, how they're engaging. So how you amplify holistically. And I love the right, because that's what you'll always get from marketers, right? So, okay, so based on all this data and what you're telling me, where would you suggest I spend my money, right? And what channels? And I think the huge sort of added benefit for this would be that sort of thinking about the tactics, the channels in collaboration and what's working best. And so you're thinking about what eggs do I put in the basket, more cross-channel versus, again, like single channel optimization.
Yep. And just one final thought I would build on Lisa's, because that another one sparked my thought is, one bullet can be is a barometer on the impact of the content as well, because you could be pushing a lot of stuff through channels, but if the content is tepid, then you won't have that kind of impact. So if the analytical team can be open and say, these are the tweaks you need, like for example, you had copay benefit, but what are you really trying to do? Is it a point of care to reduce abandonment? What is the exact content that you want to refine? Now that would actually bring the context, and Bob brought it up before as well. That is the context that marketers could say, okay, this is where I need to fine tune my content as well, because content is king in the right channel, in the right context. That is you're finishing the story. I don't know if that's helpful.
That's helpful. And I'm realizing we're running out of time. We had promised Q&A. And so Andrea, I think we can maybe take one question now, and maybe the other questions we can respond back by email later. Does that sound good?
Okay, that sounds good. I'll go with the first question then. How do we specifically measure the success and move from tactical to strategical, evolving as an industry and at an organizational level to customize at brand levels? Do you see a difference in the overall outcome between general markets versus specialty markets on its effectiveness?
So moving from tactical to strategic, evolving as an industry. Okay, how do you measure the success? Yeah, so it's basically, I think Shiva, you want to take this? You were talking about, your execution engagement and then the results, and that is one part. And then the second part is general markets versus specialty markets.
Correct. I'll take a shot at it. I think the first place that would do it, if you were to frame the right KBQs, key business questions. You start with the KBQs, and then you land on the few KPIs that you're trying to track, because that is a strategic. Because KPI is a harbinger of success, right? So you're landing on it. So the gestalt of all the tactics that you're doing have to mean. And then if your KPIs are indicating, say, the strength or maybe softness, that's when the strategic conversation comes in. Is it content? Is it channel? Is it my overall ability to integrate? And then it comes to execution. That is how you bring it together as a strategic conversation. Two, from a specialty versus a primary care marketplace, I would argue that the primary care marketplace is a lot more fierce. So you have to be a lot more agile in the primary care. The specialty has a little more latitude to a certain extent, but fast becoming also more hyper competitive. But in the primary care, you want to be a lot more agile in certain spaces, whether it's say dermatology or cardiovascular. It is really fierce. So the question is, that strategic advantage can be created, provided you're able to be agile and contextualize that. It could be as simple as, when do you do EMR versus programmatic? How do you do that? So, I mean, this is a huge conversation, so I just want to give that soundbite, and we can obviously follow up. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Shiva. We are running out of time. So what I would do is just recap our conversation. So I think what we learned today is, obviously, we started by framing what is omnichannel analytics, across various time horizons, the different topics that come in. I think some of the panel members reminded us that we can't think of NPP and rep as separate. We think of them as just the personal and the surround sound that's happening through NPP. We talked a lot about context setting. Several panel members talked about that, understanding the context of the customer, context of the marketer, context of the salesperson, context in many different ways to improve our analytics. We talked about planning time to come up with sharper insights. And then we talked about less is more, right? So when you're delivering your insights, think about what is the key message that you want to communicate to your audience, and how will you drive adoption based on that. There will be a survey being sent out post this session that will come from PMSA, and then I think the materials are also posted on the PMSA website. What we will also do is, for the remaining questions that were in the Q&A, we will provide you responses separately as well. So thank you all for your time today for this important conversation. I think we will continue this discussion together and evolve our thinking as an industry as we embark on this journey on omnichannel. Thank you. And thank you to all the panel members for such an engaging conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vandana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Really
great
appreciate
day.
it.
Take care.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.